What am I saying? Who are you? What's your name?
I don't know.
What do people
I don't know.
need to know?
Maybe we should go and listen to other podcasts and see how they start. Hello, welcome to Le Pod. It's a brand new podcast we're going to be putting out from down here in the basement of Le Pub twice a month. We're going to be talking to our staff, our community, local bands, local artists, and anyone we think is interesting.
Yes, welcome to episode 7 of Le Pod. The first episode of a shiny and happy new year, 2021. Happy New Year, folks. Hope you had a good Christmas and New Year's as much as you could. Tried to kind of avoid the strangeness that just surrounds everything. I had fun. I thought it was good. I guess I'm in a privileged position to be able to say that, but big fan of Christmas. What can I say? It was good, and I hope all of you had a good time as well. Throwing a bit of a curveball to you all this week. A little bit of a different episode. Started with a confession, mind. It was supposed to be 2 guests on this week's episode. And now there's not. Now there's only one, because I'm an absolute bellend. And I deleted half the episode. That is a very long story short, but it's gone. And I'd like to make a public apology to one half of what was supposed to be today's episode, and that is to Cue Ball. He's a professional wrestler in the Newport area, and he was actually our most requested guest to come onto the pod as well, so I was really looking forward to it, and apparently you were as well. And I just went and deleted it. I didn't mean to, I promise. And it was a really good episode, really good chat. I was looking forward to it, but it's gone. It is no more. I guess that is the dangers of running a DIY podcast. There is very little in the way of safety net. If I mess up, it's gone. It's messed up. Things get deleted forever. But I've already promised him that he will be back on as soon as we kind of get through our run of organised guests. We will get around to him. And Cue Ball, if you're listening, I am sorry, and you will be on the pod as soon as possible. So yeah, I kind of revealed the giveaway there before I even meant to. Today's Curveball episode is a wrestling special, and it was supposed to be with Cue Ball and Martyn the Whiskey Chaser Grant, who is one half of professional wrestling tag team High and Mighty. They've been going for a little while. We talk about their kind of origin stories in the episode, but they're making waves, man. And they even, despite the absolute nightmare that was 2020, they managed to get something going during 2020. They managed to kind of throw a curveball of their own and put on a bit of a wrestling event unlike any other we'd seen before, and we talk about that during the episode as well, alongside topics such as...
I've said for ages, for years, I've always said that wrestling and music sort of are so closely linked. They want to see superheroes at the end of the day. And if you're there wrestling in, a t-shirt with, a scrawny arms poking out of it, with punches that couldn't, break a wet paper bag, it's not good. But that's the thing as well, when you're a creative person and you have that creative outlet taken away from you, it can really have a negative effect on you.
So yeah, luckily both halves of the planned episode were strong enough to stand on their own 2 feet and be an episode in and of themselves. Otherwise I would have been screwed this week. But yeah, not a huge amount to shout out about, as you can probably expect. We are in yet another lockdown, and I'm recording this at 6:30 on Monday the 4th of January, and I've just had a notification saying that Boris is apparently going to announce more lockdown stuff. So yeah, that's not going to be changing anytime soon. But in the meantime, at the pub we've just released a new t-shirt with a new t-shirt designed by one of our old staff members, which is just amazing. I'm wearing it right now. You can't see me, so I could be wearing anything, but I promise you that it is said t-shirt. And of course you can keep listening to the pod always. I will be here, we will be here every 2 weeks, and you can listen and support Le Pub that way. And we will be eternally grateful, as I say most episodes, because it's true. So, without further ado, here is the conversation with Martyn Grant of High and Mighty.
Yeah, all good, mate. I can see that fetching leopard skin top of yours.
Wore it just for you. I thought you'd like it.
Top notch, mate. Can't fault it.
How you been? You all right?
Yeah, good, mate. You know, well, as good as you can be.
Yeah.
With well, this year's been a bit of a write-off. Well, last year has been a bit of a write-off, and
Yeah, well, that's weird. Yeah, last year. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
proper weird. Yeah, yeah. Did you manage to get anything kind of in the works other than the Dojo Deathmatch that you filmed? We'll talk about that a bit later. But like, was it just a write-off completely other than that?
More or less, everything after February, March time was sort of cancelled. Then there was a couple of shows which they were sort of hoping to get off the ground, which obviously never happened. They were sort of tentatively booked and then postponed and then cancelled.
Yeah.
So it's basically been a complete write-off, which is why we did the dojo match in the first place.
Yeah, yeah. Which was wicked. Yeah, I feel like we jumped in kind of before we even introduced who I'm talking to anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Rewind.
yeah, a little bit, yeah. Well, obviously, I'm going to introduce you in the prelude bit, but you are Martyn the Whiskey Chaser Grant. And yeah, how did you start up in wrestling? Like what brought you into the game in the first place?
It's a bit of a weird coincidence, really, because I've been watching wrestling since as far as I can remember. Like I remember pretty much my first memory is watching wrestling back when I was like 4 years old, something like that. So I've always been a fan, but I was sort of looking into it. Back when I started, there wasn't that many sort of training schools around, which was about 2006.
Right.
Sort of been looking to try and get involved since about 2005. But then it was one of those ones where, I don't know, I just never really, I was still playing rugby at the time, so I never really had the opportunity to, and I wasn't really, I don't know, it wasn't happening. But then
Yeah.
my brother went to university, complete sort of coincidence, happenstance, fate, whatever you want to call it. His housemate's friend happened to be the trainer of a wrestling school.
Oh, no.
So his housemate had his friend round. They're in the living room talking, and he mentioned that my brother mentioned, oh yeah, we're big wrestling fans, whatever. Me and my brother, and this guy said, oh well, I'm head trainer of a wrestling school. You guys should come down. So my brother shot me a text, phone lit up like a Christmas tree, and you know, I couldn't believe my luck. A week later, we were down there, NWA Wales 2006, and then it all went down from there.
Nice, man. Fate almost. So like you say you always watched wrestling, like going back to those kind of days, were you, like, I know me and my brother, we were always like DDTing each other and Walls of Jericho in and all that sort of stuff. Were you into that sort of thing? Is that kind of a foundation for you, or was it not until you got into the school side of things?
Well, plenty of broken sofas and bruises, black eyes around the house over the years. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's just a thing, really. We used to wrestle with my mates and stuff, used to piss around or whatever, but it wasn't until obviously got into the school, the wrestling school side of it, that you learn what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and why. So it's learning. It really is like an art form, to be honest. Knowing what to do and not only how to do it, but when to do it. You know.
Was it a bit of an eye-opener as well? Was it kind of, oh, wow, I definitely haven't been kind of even thinking that way? Or was it kind of going along the lines you were already thinking from what you've watched on TV and stuff?
A bit of both, to be honest. I think I'd been watching long enough and was sort of like a student of the game before I got into it, if you imagine, really.
Yeah.
So there was sort of things that I knew of it, but obviously I didn't know the specifics. So, like, you could generally figure out sort of techniques and how to do the moves, but there's subtle nuances that you wouldn't understand until you got into the business and you take a peek behind the curtain. It's like being a magician, basically. So
right.
You learn how to do the tricks and you can't unsee it once you've seen it, sort of thing, you know.
Changes it completely forever.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, I get it. So kind of coming up to more of the present day in your wrestling career, you're part of a tag team. Would you say that is your kind of your primary vehicle of wrestling at the moment, as part of High and Mighty, or is there other stuff as well?
it's definitely at the forefront. I'd say I went through I started out as a tag team wrestler with my brother in
All
like
right. I had
2006.
no
Yeah,
idea.
used to
Didn't
tag
know
my
that.
brother back in the day.
I didn't even know that your brother
Um,
did wrestling as well. I knew he was a fan with you, but I didn't know he did it as well.
well, we both started together, but
Right.
then I think he had a knee injury really early on, so he only had sort of like a handful of matches, like 4 or 5 tops, and
Right.
then stepped away for good, kind of thing. So I started out as a tag team with my brother, and then he left. I tried convincing him to come back, and he wasn't having it.
No.
So I went solo for a bit. Then I wrestled by myself up until about, I'd say, from 2009 to about 2016, and then formed High and Mighty with Mark
Yeah.
Daniels, and then that's been pretty much the sole focus ever since. Like we both still do singles matches and solo
Yeah.
efforts, but it's all sort of geared towards pushing High and Mighty.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's kind of the formation story behind High and Mighty? How did that happen?
Well, that was another weird one. I had, I think, I just had hernia surgery,
Okay.
so I was like sitting on the sidelines, injured, and I couldn't really do much for about best part of 2 months. And I think Mark sent me a message or something joking around, or I sent him a message joking around, and he said something like, "Oh, we should start a tag team." And then I was like, "Mate, if you're up for it, I'm up for it. Obviously, I can't do anything right now because I'm still stitched up. I've just had hernia surgery."
Yeah.
So I said, "Oh, come round. I can't leave the house, but come round. We'll shoot the shit over a couple of beers and stuff, and we'll see what happens. We'll go from there," kind of thing. So he came round. We polished off a couple of crates, and then I Am Mighty was born after that, pretty much.
And you've carried on the same way ever since, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 100%.
So going back to the Dojo Deathmatch that we mentioned earlier, do you want to just kind of tell us what that is? Because just the title is intriguing enough. Like, explain what it's all about and how it went down and stuff.
Before I get to that, I just thought, now I've actually the name High and Mighty's got a good story behind it as
Oh,
well.
yeah, cool.
We were going down to train one day, me and Mark. We used to train down a facility in Blackwood. We had a really good ring set up, but it's not there anymore. But I think at the time, the promotion we were working for wanted to call us Marty and Mark, like
Marty
M
and
and
Mark.
M. And
Oh,
I thought,
yeah.
this is awful. It's, cringe inducing. So I
Sounds
thought,
like an 80s sitcom or something. Marty and
it
Mark.
does, doesn't it? It really does. Yeah. But so we were driving down to training, and I said, "Oh, mate, we can't be going out as Marty and Mark. It just sounds like it's death before you even reach the curtain," kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I said, anything's better than that. Even something like, I don't know, High and Mighty, something like that's better than that. And then we were sort of like silent for about 10 seconds, looked at each other, went, "Why don't we just use that?" So we were High and Mighty from that point onwards then.
Just a throwaway name from the top of the head, like.
Yeah, so
It works.
Well, yeah, if it sticks, why not? And then that was that, and we kept it ever since.
Which one's High and which one's Mighty? Do you fight over which one's which?
Oh, we don't. So I think we've had a couple of matches before where the commentary has sort of said, "Oh, there's High. I guess he must be the high one." It's like it's all the double entendre kind of thing going on there. So yeah, I suppose take it as you wish.
Giving some material to the commentary team. Not bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Dojo Deathmatch then. Like, I've watched it and it's sick. Like, because you released it during lockdown, yeah?
Yeah, we did, yeah.
Yeah.
September.
It's tons of fun. Like, it's like, it made me laugh. It made me like kind of gripped at the same time. Like, it was wicked. Like, take us through like what it is and how it's gone and stuff.
Well, that's another one. That was sort of the whole concept. Pretty much once it became evident that this whole coronavirus was going to be here to stay kind of thing, and shows weren't going to be back for a long time, I sort of came up with this idea of, oh, well, why don't we, if we can't have shows anymore, rather than waiting for shows to come back, why don't we be proactive and use the downtime positively? Still keep busy. It gives us something to do. Keeps us sane.
Yeah, yeah.
And it still keeps, it's still content for the fans if they want it. So we had, I was racking my brains of things to do, and it all stemmed from, I had this picture, this King Kong print
All right.
that I was going to throw out. And then I had an idea one day. I was doing weights. It was in the garage, and I was thinking, oh, wouldn't it be a great spot if somebody was in a match and they had that print smashed over their head and their head poked through the King Kong face? And then it was just like, I thought, hang on now. So it all sort of built from that one spot. So where that spot is in the match.
Yeah, yeah.
But so it sort of like backtracked then, and it grew and grew. And I went to Mark and I said, look, mate, why don't we do a match now, just between the two of us? We can spend weeks building up to it. We can have the promos, we can have the training montages and everything else, and it gives us something to aim towards and keep us occupied when we know that we're not going to be having any shows for a long time.
Yeah.
So that's what we did then. And so we already trained at this dojo, so that was the venue, and we thought this is ideal. Had a rough idea of the story, how the match was going to go, and everything else just found the place then.
Yeah, it was. It's longer than I expected. Like, it must have taken like a long time to film it all and get it all right. How long did it take?
It took hours. It literally took hours.
I'm sure it did.
I think that was one. That was a night. I think it was like late August. We went down to the dojo. I think I was adamant it had to be filmed at night for continuity purposes, because I thought if it's in the day, you'll have the sun over here on one shot. The next shot, it'll be dark or whatever.
Yeah.
So I thought, we got to film it once the sun goes down. So we did it from I think it took from 8 till something like 8 till 2 or 8 till 1 a.m.
Oh, never.
And with all the stops and starts, we had to recharge the camera loads of times. We didn't do a lot of retakes for the actual wrestling and the matches, but just setting up all the shots took a lot of time.
Yeah. Was it all one camera, or did you have multiple?
No, well, it was virtually all on one camera.
Yeah.
We did use a secondary camera for the initial wrestling part, which we used just to cut between. Yeah. And that was the one we used as the CCTV footage in the end. So that's why the one footage is a little bit grainy and the others, proper, 4K quality, whatever.
Yeah. Nice, man. And how
it was a long old.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty good, mate. It's been, I'd say, virtually 95%, 99% positive.
Yeah.
If there is negativity, then we haven't heard too much about it. I think a lot of people were skeptical going in, not knowing what to expect. Whether it was going to be some 2-bit operation that wasn't very good, was low budget, or was just, I don't know. I think a lot of people were expecting it to be like sort of just like a match with no fans around, but we were adamant we wanted it to be different. So that's why it's got like a soundtrack in the background. It's filmed a little differently. There's quirks to it, and it's multi-layered, and obviously there's comedy laced throughout as well.
Yeah, there is.
Keep it different.
Yeah. Which I've always liked that in storylines in like WWE and stuff, like the bits that'll make you laugh. Like there's the kind of, I don't know, like the gory kind of parts of it as well, the stunts kind of parts of it, and then there's a humor as well. I think it's important to have all of those elements in it.
Tick all the boxes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I wanted to make something that was sort of had everything in it that would please everyone. So there's technical wrestling at the start. Yeah. That will please the diehard wrestling fans who want the wrestling. There's the stunts with the falls and the cheers and the big hits and whatever, and then there's the comedy from the start and then dotted throughout to the end kind of thing. Yeah. So I wanted something that's, whether you're a wrestling fan or whether you're just sort of an action fan or whether you're just not even a fan at all, it would be entertaining.
Yeah, just happen to scroll across it on your Facebook or whatever. Yeah, it would kind of draw you in. Yeah. I think, like from my perspective as well, like lockdown just went on for so long that like you were saying, you had to just try something new just to keep things alive. Like that's pretty much how this podcast was born. Like it's just shows weren't happening, so like gigs weren't happening, so we have to do something just to try and keep momentum and just keep things going. I'd never done a podcast before. There was zero budget for it, but yeah, here we are. You gotta try. Like,
Gotta roll the punches. But
yeah,
that's the thing as well. When you're a creative person and you have that creative outlet taken away from you, it can really have a negative effect on you.
yeah.
So, sort of stifling your creativity, whether you're a musician, I don't know, a theater actor or whatever, or a wrestler. I mean, if you take away your ability to perform and your ability to create, it can really sort of just leave you spinning your wheels from one day to the next, not knowing A, when things are going to go back to normal, and B, if they ever will. And it can have a negative effect on you mentally.
Hugely. Yeah. It's interesting what you were saying about creative outlets as well, because I know you're hugely into music as well.
Yeah.
But would you say that wrestling is your creative outlet, your primary creative outlet then?
100%. I think I've said for ages, for years, I've always said that wrestling and music sort of are so closely linked. If you think of the hustle behind it, if you're a struggling band looking to make that break, or trying to get booked on a show, or trying to get booked at a venue, or even booked on a festival or whatever, it's so similar to being a wrestler trying to get booked on a show, trying to get booked on an event.
Yeah.
It's
The
the parallels
yeah.
uncanny.
Yeah. It makes me think of your tattoo. I can see right now the wrestling ropes and the music notes on the same one.
Well, there you go.
They're not personified, but brought to life, I guess. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, it is crazy. Like I was before, because I did one wrestling interview with Cue Ball before this one, and obviously you as well. So kind of prepping myself, I watched The Wrestler. I know you rate it a lot. And even in that, there's huge crossovers with wrestling and music. Like it's, like they both kind of make the film. And in my kind of experience as well, I remember the first time, well, not the first time, but one of the major kind of things I can remember with Lemmy was when he did the Triple H's entrance music, and he was there at one of the WrestleManias or whatever. I was like, who is this guy? He's proper rock and roll.
Yeah, he was.
And they just kind of go hand in hand. It's crazy.
Yeah, rock and wrestling they've been, married at the hip since the dawning of time, basically.
Yeah.
And it's like I said, the industries themselves are so closely linked. I think you said about The Wrestler.
Yeah.
If you watch what's it called? Star is Born. That's quite, in that you've got the washed up over the hill sort of legend who's sort of like clinging on to the limelight by his teeth, even though he's got all these demons. There's underlying themes that are just similar to, they're just rampant in both industries.
Yeah.
So it's, like I said, mate, you can just, if you took the same principles and just changed the names, it could be the same industry.
Yeah. Carrying on with The Wrestler then. Hopefully people listening to this have seen it. If they haven't, then they definitely should. But
Yes, they should.
How does it make you feel watching it? Because it's not like an easy watch a lot of the time. Like a lot of it is like, it's great and it's entertaining, but some of it's like really dark, and it's the kind of the stark realities of, like you say, like an aging legend kind of thing. Does it put you off at all from kind of pursuing this and like devoting your life to it to any kind of further degree? Or is it just, I don't know, what are your thoughts essentially?
To be honest, when I watched it, I was just hoping that it would be accurate and an accurate portrayal of what wrestling is, because it is, I think the amount of times there have been wrestling films and they either don't get it. It's not a sport that translates well on film.
No, yeah.
Like you've had Ready to Rumble, Nacho Libre, and all these pathetic attempts of like, recreating wrestling on film, and it never ever translates well.
They almost like mock it.
Yeah, it's like they don't get it. The people who make the films don't get it, and they treat it like they don't know whether to go into it with wrestling being this legitimate sporting element, or whether to, take it tongue in cheek, or it never turns out well. but I think with the wrestler, it was the first time I saw a wrestling film or any kind of wrestling show on the TV where it came across legit, and it was a really accurate portrayal of what it is like from going to these shows and the people backstage and the way the setup is with the people sat taping up their wrists, going through their matches to the drives to the show, to the fans at the shows. It was really accurate.
Yeah. It was great in that, seeing them like backstage, like you were saying, where they would, like, it almost looked like they kind of made up their matches and wrote their matches like there on the spot, like just before they went out. Like, is that kind of real as well? Like, you kind of make it up that soon before going through the curtain, or?
I can't pull back the curtain that much.
I wanted an exclusive.
Yeah, it's pretty accurate, is what I'll say.
Yeah,
the whole film is pretty accurate from start to finish, even down to the blade job when he does.
Yeah,
he gets bloody in the match. They call that getting color. When he gets color, that is like pretty accurate. I think the whole film, to start to finish, is proper. Probably the closest you can get to a wrestling documentary on a silver screen as you will. It's that accurate.
Highly recommended. Then we'll say
100%.
that. Yeah, for sure.
Do you know who was originally cast in Mickey Rourke's role?
No idea. I can't imagine anyone else doing that role.
Nicolas Cage.
Oh, really?
Seriously.
Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
I know you say it would be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Like, just from like a body type perspective, I'm like questioning that coal mine. That would be weird.
I think half the reason he dropped out, don't quote me on this, but I remember reading that he had concerns that he wouldn't be able to get the physique of a wrestler, because he went to a couple of shows, done some research, and he was just like, look, this role isn't for me, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether Mickey Rourke was the first choice and they couldn't get him initially, and they pivoted to Nicolas Cage or whatever, but luckily it ended up with Rourke because he was the ideal for the role in the end.
Yeah.
And he did a good job.
It was a bit of a game changer for him as well, wasn't it? He was kind of lapsing into obscurity before that, and then that just kind of brought him straight back into the limelight.
Yeah, robbed of the Oscar that year, mate.
Yeah, did he not win it? I thought he did.
No, I think he won the Golden Globe or the BAFTA or something, but he lost out to Sean Penn with Milk.
Each to their own, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, you got ripped off big time.
So we touched on physique there, Nicolas Cage. Kind of putting it bluntly and honestly, you're pretty freaking jacked. Like, you clearly work on your physique. But like, how important would you say that is to being a wrestler, to getting into wrestling? Because you obviously see it on like the WWE, they're all like just jacked and ripped. But how important is it, would you say?
Personally, I think it's massively important. I think if you look like the people who should be sat in the stands and should be sat in the front row, then you probably should be.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I think people come to a wrestling show to see people out of the ordinary performing. They want to see superheroes at the end of the day. And if you look, and if you're there wrestling in, a t-shirt with, a scrawny arms poking out of it, with punches that couldn't, break a wet paper bag, it's not good. It doesn't look good for the sport. It doesn't look good for the show you're on, and it takes people out of the moment. So I think if you want to be taken seriously, you've got to take yourself seriously. And if fitness and hitting the gym isn't part of that, then people need to take a good hard look at themselves, really.
Yeah.
Even from like a fitness perspective, if you haven't got the fitness to go 15, 20, 30 plus minutes, then what are you doing in the ring anyway?
Yeah. Is it like demanding on a cardio level?
It can be, yeah. I mean, you can pace yourself, but if you're, there's been a few times where you're in the ring and you're going hell for leather, and obviously the pace picks up and drops and picks up and drops throughout the match based on how a match is structured. But you need to be able to last cardiovascularly. And if you can't, then you can be in for a rough ride when you hit the wall.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But even from a safety perspective, if you're not strong enough to lift someone, like I've been in matches before when someone has wanted to do a move, like say for example, I don't know, a T-bone suplex,
Yeah,
or even a standard body slam. If somebody wants to do a body slam and they're not physically strong enough to lift you, that's dangerous in itself, and they're
that's
not only
interesting.
putting themselves at risk, they're putting you at risk by trying a move which they're physically not capable of doing. So I
Yeah,
think fitness and training and strength and power, all facets of it, is really important, even outside of aesthetics.
yeah. That makes sense. I never thought of the safety aspect of it before.
Yeah.
Like, would you say that there are kind of other skills important to wrestling that might compensate for like a lack in physique? Like, I don't know, like mic work, like being really charismatic on the mic, or like a willingness to do the stunts that we were talking about before, like being like a Jeff Hardy kind of character or whatever. Does that compensate at all, or would you say that
It
it's
can
most
do.
important? Yeah.
Yeah, it can do. I think there's always going to be exceptions to the rule, and at the end of the day, they say a wrestling show should be like a all you can eat Chinese buffet. So you've got
Right.
like your one thing over your, you've got your next thing, or even like a circus. You've got your, if you're not into the high wire act, you might be into the lion tamer. If you're not into that, you might like the strong man. If you're not into that, you might like the clowns or something else. So that's what a wrestling show should be like. It should be a variety show. So if everyone went out there looking like Hercules, then it would be pretty boring by the time you got to the third match. So
Yeah.
I think it's good to have variety. It's good to have different body types. And as long as you look different, I mean, you don't have to look like a Greek god. You can look like, you could be a big 20 stone, 25 stone chubster at the end of the day. But if
Yeah.
that's your
Yeah.
gimmick and you work it and you are into your character, I think that's just as good. As long as
Yeah.
you look different, I think. I mean, like I said, there's always going to be exceptions to the rule. You've got someone like you say, a Jeff Hardy. More recent example would be Darby Allin, who's in AEW, who's very similar.
Right.
Quite a thin guy, probably doesn't weigh a lot. Very skilled. He's got that daredevil aspect to it, so he's quite popular. You've got
Yeah.
even Mick Foley. Mick Foley back in a time when everyone
True.
else was, sort of chiseled from granite. You had like Triple H, Steve Austin, The Rock.
Yeah.
In that same breath, you had Mankind, and he
Yeah.
did not look like any of those other guys on his
No.
best. But he's always going to be one of the greatest of all time, because he had the passion, he believed in himself, and he was just so different, and he
Yeah.
did leave a mark.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. And some of his, like the stunts that he did as well were just, phenomenal, which
Yeah.
makes me think, kind of a question I was thinking of earlier. If there was any stunt like in WWE history or wrestling history in general that you could recreate, that you could be a part of, like, what would you pick? What would be your stunt to do?
Oh man, that's a hell of a question. I think when you talk about stunts in WWE, I mean, I think the obvious one is the first one that comes to virtually anyone's mind is going to be Mick Foley off the top of the Hell in Cell.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
sort of embodies the term wrestling stunt, really.
Yeah.
But I think Mick got a bit more cushion than I have, so I probably wouldn't fancy taking that bump myself. But yeah, I suppose it depends on the day, really. I don't turn down a lot when it
No.
comes to wrestling matches. As long as it makes sense, I'm happy to do it, and as long as it fits in with the story, and I trust the person I'm working with, then I probably wouldn't turn it down.
Yeah. Sick, man. So going from the kind of the stunt aspect, who would you say was kind of A, the best technical wrestler, and B, the best on the mic, like the other two kind of qualities important to wrestling that we talked about?
Well, from a technical standpoint, I think hands down it's got to be Bret Hart springs to mind. Guy was an absolute scientist in the ring. Kurt Angle's another one. Ric Flair, Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, all of those names, Dean Malenko.
Yeah.
Absolute geniuses in the ring. They were artists when it comes to technical wrestling.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned Kurt Angle, because obviously he came
Yeah.
from a Olympic wrestling background.
Yeah.
Do you think that translates well, or is that kind of a different world usually?
It can translate. It depends on the individual, really, because I think there have been crossovers, sort of. Brock Lesnar is a prime example.
Yeah, true.
You had sort of Shelton Benjamin, Charlie Haas. Even back in the day, you had sort of Vern Gagne back in the 60s and 70s. He was, I think he was freestyle wrestling. He could have gone to the Olympics.
All right.
But yeah, it can translate, but you got those, I think once they're out, I don't think you could do them side by side, because you've got the one where you're sort of, it's embedded in you. Don't get pinned, don't show emotion. Yeah. And then the other side of the coin in professional wrestling is show emotion, and you've got to sort of like check your ego at the door kind of thing. Yeah. It's virtually the exact opposite, but there's fundamental similarities.
Yeah.
But I think based on the sort of roll call of crossovers, it's got to be a yes. It does translate.
Yeah, I guess so.
Even today, you've got someone like Brock Lesnar, who is probably one of the only mega stars left in the company at the moment in WWE.
Yeah.
And obviously he came from a collegiate background.
Yeah, and then he even took it to MMA, to the UFC as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
yeah.
I guess if once you reach a certain level of athleticism, there's probably not that much that you can't put your hand to and be kind of above average successful. You know what I mean?
Well, there's even been, you look at like sort of like the celebrity crossovers.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, they are sort of, toe curlingly bad.
Yeah.
But every now and again, there'll be that one sort of glimmering light where you have a sportsman who is capable, and if they're committed enough, they can make it look fantastic. So yeah, like Floyd Mayweather a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, it's about 10 years ago. But,
time flies.
He had a really good effort. History's been dotted with athletes who popped up every now and again who've done a really good job of not making a mockery of it. So it's I think if you're an athlete and they go in with the right mindset, I think the world's their oyster, really.
Yeah, that's fair. So going to the question, who would you say was best on the mic then?
The obvious one is The Rock, isn't it?
He is the go-to. Yeah.
I've always been a Ric Flair guy, though. So I probably Randy Savage. Obviously Hogan is money every time you put a mic in his hand.
Yeah.
But I think it's got to be, for me, I would go with. I'd probably pick Ric Flair, to be honest.
Yeah, he'd be your go-to.
Yeah, he was just so good for so long.
Yeah.
That it's hard not to pick him.
Man, he was, yeah. Even when I was watching it, like back in the day, I swear he was like 70 already. Like he was just always an old man in my mind, even though he obviously wasn't. Yeah, fair.
It's the white hair. It's sort of masks it a bit. I think he was in his 40s in the 90s.
Yeah, that's when I would have been watching it. Yeah.
There you go. Then I think he was in his 40s, and then obviously he was still wrestling through to 2008. I think he officially retired from WWE anyway.
Yeah.
So that would have been must have been in his mid to late 50s at that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, guy was an absolute icon every time he picked up a microphone.
Yeah, the longevity on him as well. Crazy. Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to take up too much of your time, man. I got a couple more questions for you, if that's all right.
Back on, mates.
Yeah.
I haven't got a curfew.
Wicked. So we talked a little bit about, like, when we were talking about The Wrestler, how, like, not many films have kind of nailed it about what wrestling is really about. What would you say is the most misunderstood element of wrestling in kind of the general public?
That it doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
That's got to be top of the list.
Yeah.
I think the F word comes up so often. It's like, every time somebody says, like being, in shape, someone will say, do you do many sports? Do you do bodybuilding? I'll say, no, I'm a wrestler. And you say, not that fake WWE stuff. That's almost the unanimous response.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'll be like, yeah, the fake WWE stuff. Yeah, that stuff. And then they have that awkward moment where they have to backtrack off that comment.
Yeah. I meant,
Yeah.
yeah.
But it's like, it's, I would say it's not fake, it's fixed. And that just
Right.
sums up wrestling in itself.
There's a
It's
big
not,
difference.
yeah. I mean, you can't fake gravity at the end of the day. If you're falling 7 foot and you landed on your back on a hard wooden floor, people think it's a trampoline.
Yeah.
It's hard plywood on metal girders. Granted, there's some give to it. There is a spring under there. It hurts, and if you're not used to falling on it, you find that out the hard way.
I bet you just want to kind of step him into the ring. Anyone who says that it's fake.
Weirdly enough, I remember the first time my mum came and watched me wrestle. I think I was like probably the first year I was in wrestling. After the show had finished, she came up and sort of pushed down on the ring just out of curiosity, and she was like, "Oh, it's actually really hard, isn't it?" Yeah, it is. It really is. But people don't understand. So I'd say that biggest misconception is that it doesn't hurt.
Yeah. So that's what we want to educate people on. That fixed, not fake, and then it does actually hurt.
You can't fake gravity. Take that one home.
Yeah.
It's the take home.
Have you ever like you were saying then, you gave that scenario where people were like, "Oh, you into the fake WWE stuff." Did you ever go through a time where, like, was there any like source of like shame or embarrassment about saying like what you're into, or have you always just kind of, "No, this is what I do. I'm proud of it"?
It's a funny one, that is. I think a lot of wrestling fans sort of go through a period in their lives where they're sort of like a little bit gun shy about saying whether they are a wrestling fan or not. But I never had that. I was always, I've been into wrestling since I was 4. It's my oldest memory. It's what I love, and I've been, hard and steadfast about it ever since I was 4 years old. Really, it's like, this is cool. I think it's cool. If you don't think it's cool, then go F yourself. But I think even from like a worker's point of view, I think coming out and telling people, "Oh yeah, I do professional wrestling," or whatever.
Yeah.
People 9 times out of 10, once you get over that hurdle of, I do the fake WWE stuff, they are more interested than anything else. And then there's like a reel of 100 questions to follow. And I think most of the time I don't tell people until they ask. Yeah. It's not something that, I'll come out and be wearing as a badge of honor and tell everyone that walks past on the street. But if somebody does ask me and then it comes up in conversation or whatever, that is generally, you'll have the automatic response of the fake WWE stuff. And then once you tell them, it's followed up with a ream of questions of curiosity, and people find it quite interesting.
Yeah. It's funny, like, even when I was a kid, like properly younger, into like collecting like sticker books and stuff like that, I had all like the wrestling sticker books, and it got to a stage man, and got to the stage in school where other people kind of gravitated towards the FIFA sticker books. And I remember being mocked for continuing with the wrestling sticker books as if it was something lesser, even though obviously it's childish stuff, like it doesn't matter now, but like kind of analyzing it from like an athletic standpoint, arguably wrestling is far more athletically kind of impressive than football, but they're at least equal in that arena, you know what I mean? But like still there is that like stigma that it's like a childish thing or whatever, and I don't really get it. I don't understand.
That's a great word, mate. I think wrestling has had a stigma for decades, and I think it goes back to being even now. Like, I see some stuff on TV, and if there's somebody else who's also seen it or in earshot or whatever, you do feel embarrassed sometimes watching certain things that are really condescending or childish or whatever, and it's sort of the exceptions rather than the rule kind of thing. Like 9 times out of 10, if you put wrestling on and there's some really entertaining stuff, and there's some really athletic grappling, there's submissions, there's counter holds, there's aerial acrobatics, there's everything you could want. And I think if that same person had turned it on at that moment, they'd be hooked.
Yeah.
But they happen to turn it on where you've got some, midget running around with a, super soaker or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
And you'll have those moments, but they tend to be few and far between these days, luckily.
Yeah. It's weird. Do you think the stigma is lessening over time, or getting worse, or kind of just staying the same? What would you say?
I think it's lessening, I'd say. I think it's become a little bit more accepted over time.
Yeah.
I think from a British perspective, it's sort of the Big Daddy era of wrestling fan is sort of dying out or becoming less, and it's becoming more of a generational thing where obviously I grew up watching early 90s wrestling all the way through the 90s.
Yeah.
There wasn't much British wrestling, if any, on TV.
No,
so my only exposure to professional wrestling as a youngster was, your Bret Harts, your Shawn Michaels, Sting, and all the rest of them, as opposed to Big Daddy and Giant Haystacks, who, it's that sort of generation is growing older now, and maybe they've grown out of wrestling or whatever. And I think wrestling as a sport or as an art form gets a lot more respect now because of the crossover. I think a lot of it, to be honest. I mean, if you look at the crossover into other medias, like The Rock, he's probably arguably the biggest movie star in the world.
Yeah, he's definitely.
And he's, women love him, men love him, kids love him.
Yeah.
He's sort of like universally loved, and he's charismatic. He's built like a Greek god. And at the end of the day, he's a wrestler. He can be in 100 movies and never wrestle again, but he'll always be a wrestler.
Yeah.
And I think we as wrestlers and the wrestling industry gets a lot more respect now because of the crossover appeal. Like, even from a sporting perspective, you've got, like, again, going back to someone like Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle, legitimate athletes. And badasses as well who can handle themselves. Yeah. And they are wrestlers. So I think it gets a lot more respect now, and it isn't just held up as this phony, guys jumping around in tights malarkey.
Yeah. I guess it's probably a thing that, like, The Rock has never turned his back on his wrestling days. He's never tried to, like, hide them or kind of move away completely. Obviously, he's focused more on movies, but, like, even he occasionally goes back and appears in the WWE and stuff. Yeah. So
I think he went through a stage. I think when he first crossed over, he had, like, I think his agent at the time wanted him to distance himself. So that was when he first started going by Dwayne Johnson. Yeah. And he was no longer The Rock and stuff. And he lost a lot of weight. He was taking really sort of roles that were outside the box, like the Tooth Fairy and all that stuff. And I think when he started, I think he switched managers or something, and he went back and he embraced his past, and he took a lot of roles that were more suited to his fan base. I think that was when he really exploded. So I think, there's a lesson to be learned there, really.
For sure. Like, it just makes sense. Like, he spent decades building up this character and this fan base. Just to turn your back on it is just illogical.
100%. Yeah.
Mental. So I think I'm going to draw things to a close. Like, I could talk wrestling and music literally all day long, but it's got to come to an end at some point. So what's on the cards for High and Mighty? What's coming up next? I know, like, 2021's not looking too different to 2020 at the moment. Hopefully we can get some live shows going, but have you got anything else in the works?
Well, first things first, there's going to be a sequel to Dojo Deathmatch.
Oh yeah.
So
nice.
That's 100% going ahead. It's just a case of when we can do it now. Yeah. Originally we planned to do it sooner rather than later, but I think the whole, tier 4s and tier 87 by the time we get out of it. I know. But I think that's kind of put the kibosh on a little bit, but there'll definitely be a sequel at some point.
Awesome.
So I think in the long term, hopefully shows get back up and running, and we can get back to a little bit of normality. But yeah, in the short term, there'll be High versus Mighty 2 for sure.
Wicked. That's great. Where can people find out more about you and about High and Mighty? Where do you want people to head?
Facebook page is the main source at the moment, so that's facebook.com/High and Mighty Wrestling. Everything you need to know is on there. All the links to previous matches and stuff is on there. Loads of pictures, and also there's the links to our YouTube channel on there where you can watch the Dojo Deathmatch in full. So head on over.
Nice one.
Casanova.
Perfect. Nice one, Mark. Cheers for your time so much. I'll all the best, and I'll speak to you soon. Hopefully catch you at a show sometime soon as well.
Hey mates, I'll be at one of yours.
Yeah, oh God. Don't even like tempt me. Don't even say the word show. Nice one, man.